Hi everybody, Deb Tucker here from Studio 180 Design, and I'm going to talk to you in this video about one of the latest tools that we've added to our lineup of tools. It's called the Large Square Squared. This tool is actually an upsized and updated version of one of our classic tools. We introduced a couple years ago a tool that we call the Square Squared. This tool is designed to work with diamond square units. Those are units that are a square set on point inside of another square. It's a self-contained tool. Everything that you need to be able to make a number of different sizes, 1 inch all the way up to 6 inch, are all contained on one tool. And when we designed the tool, and it has 3 different sections on it. It has a section that it's a series of squares that will allow you to cut a center square, a precision size, for a specific unit. If you want to make a 3-inch unit, you would use this. If you wanted to make a 6-inch unit, you would use one of these. But you'll cut the square so that it has a finished sewn diagonal of 3 inches. Then what happens is you'll oversize the triangles that go around the edges. Those oversized triangles come from squares, and the size of the squares come from the chart that's on the tool. It'll tell you what size you need to cut so that you can sew those oversized triangles into place. You would stitch 2 and press, stitch 2 more and press, and not have to worry. You don't have to worry about whether the edges line up. You don't have to worry about whether there's bowing on there or not, because the third part of the tool is a section that has X's on it. Those X's are what will line up with the sewn seams and give you a perfectly sized unit. When I place those X's over top of the seams, here, 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 and here, allows me to trim one corner, turn around, trim the other corner, finishing up with a perfect sized unit, edges on the straight of the grain, seam lines placed for high precision points when you're sewing. And in all honesty, I have been perfectly happy with the 6 sizes on this tool. But there have been a number of quilters over the course of the last couple years who have not been too happy with me because they wanted to make this unit larger. Some of them are modern quilters. You can see you have the square in a square unit back there. Many of those quilters that wanted the larger version, they wanted it not just for the simple square squared, but they wanted to take their machine embroidery and take those blocks, set them on point, and turn them into quilts. I resisted for a long time because I knew this was going to be a pretty big tool, but I finally gave in. And that's what the Large Square Squared is all about. It's the same, but it's different. The Large Square Squared, the early tool had everything self-contained in one ruler. This would have been a monster. If I put these 2 pieces together and tried to work with them, I wouldn't have liked it, and neither would you. So what we did was we took the tool and we divided it into 2 sections. With the old tool, the first section that we worked with had the squares for cutting the center square. Part A has that same thing. Part A has those series of squares that you use to cut the center square. The chart is on there for 1 inch to 12 inch, where this did 1 inch to 6 inch. And then the old tool, where we had the sections that had the X's, that becomes Part B. Part B has all those X's on it so that we can do that. Trim each unit down to precision size. But along with upsizing the tool, what I did was update it as well. And all the updates came on this Part A section. And these were the updates old to new. In the past, when I was doing a block that required fussy cutting, I was always turning my ruler over with a Sharpie marker and marking a diagonal line along there. And you could still do that if you wanted to. But I decided, since I was redesigning the tool, I was going to go ahead and put that line on there permanently. That's what helps me when I'm doing my fussy cutting. Some of the other changes, I added the increments for the strip sizes that I need to cut to be able to cut those center squares. And the other thing that I added were these registration marks here. These are registration marks here, 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 and they come out in this direction as well. that are at the halfway point for those center squares. And they are marks that allow me to go above and beyond. But before I get into the above and beyond, let me talk briefly about how this tool works. It's the same when you are making an 8-inch block. What you would do is you would start cutting the square in the middle using part A. It will cut the square a precision size. If you're doing something that has fussy cutting, you can use that part A, makes the fussy cutting easy, but you would cut for the size squares that you would use to cut in half and produce oversized surrounding side triangles. And you're going to sew those triangles into place. You'll stitch and then press, take the other two triangles, place those in position, stitch and press. There's a little secret here I found from doing lots of these in the past. When I do my stitching, I always like to put my square on top. That allows me to visually see whether those points are hanging out about the same on either edge, and it allows me to get my best 1/4 of an inch with my up against my square. But when I create that unit, it will also be oversized and ready to trim, and that's when I pull out that part B. Part B will have the X's. This is going to be a 7-inch block, so when I place this over top and I place those X's that have the number 7 right beside them, here, 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 and here, the ruler is centered, allowing me to trim those sides and trim those sides and end up with an absolutely perfect unit for making those bigger blocks, 8-inch and 12-inch and 9-inch. Now I'm going to go back here just a minute and talk a little bit about those updates. We made the changes on the big tool. We also, for those of you who might not have the small tool also now has the changes. It came in that section that was the part A, that was the part for the center squares, has the diagonal, has the registration mark, has the size of the strips. When you get the tool, it's going to come packaged, shrink wrapped together with the part A and the part B in there. The instructions will give you what you need to be able to successfully make the squares in 12 different sizes, from 1-inch all the way up to 12-inch. But those registration marks, you heard me talk about them a little bit earlier, those registration marks are going to allow me to go to the next level, because instead of just making the simple square squared, with those registration marks, I can do many other things. I can now make a square in a square in a square. It's known as the economy block. And of course, that's a 6-inch square in the middle. If that 6-inch square were this, what do I have? I have a square in a square in a square in a square. And I can keep going. I can keep stacking these squares one on top of the other. This next one has a 3-inch Lemoyne star in the middle. And it's a square in a square in a square in a square in a square. I can go all the way down to this size economy block, a 1-inch economy block, all the way up to this series of stacked squares, a square and a square and a square and a square and a square. We have a video on that and a technique sheet that will give you all the numbers that you need to be able, and all the how-to to be able to do that. And if you can do the stacked squares, it also means you can do snail's trails, because that's simply a square set on point inside of a square with a different arrangement of your values. And the biggest bonus was, sometimes that happens. I get a tool in my hand and I play with it pretty hard, and the big bonus for me, I knew this was going to be the case, the stacked squares and the snail trails, but the biggest bonus for me was the new tool also allows me to make a pineapple block. We have patterns out there. We have several patterns for the snail trail block. We have a pattern out there for the pineapple block. We have videos out there on many of these things. So take a couple minutes, watch the video, make sure to stop at your local quilt shop, pick up your large square squared tool, learn how to use it with the instructions that you get, and then start ripping and tearing through some of these other great things that you can make with this tool. You can get them at your local quilt shop. If they don't happen to have them, visit us at our website. It's studio180design.net.